Here's the interface to Mudbox 2016. When you first open it, you might get this welcome pop-up. It's just showing you that if you want to learn some of the tips and tricks and tools within Mudbox, you can see these 1-minute movies. If you want to start a sculpt from a pre-made mesh that Mudbox comes with, you can start from a basic head or a human body or whatever. And if you have Mudbox files saved, recent files, you could open them here, or you can search and open here. So you can just close this window. So here's the main viewport here, the interface for Mudbox, and you can use Alt and left mouse button. So hold Alt down and left mouse button to toggle around. You can use your middle mouse button or your scroll wheel to zoom in and out. You can use your middle mouse button with Alt down to pan around. So again, that's Alt and left to toggle, Alt and middle mouse button to pan. So it's very similar to the way Autodesk Maya works. If you look up at the top here, you have your common menu set. So your common menu set, you have your file where you can open, you can import, you can save. You have edit where you have your undos and your redos. You can duplicate different things. You can delete selection, so forth, unfreeze or freeze certain things. You have create, so you can create any of those pre-made meshes. You can create curves, lights, materials, selection sets if you want to create a selection set to save something that you previously selected. Here is your mesh menu. So this is where you would add new subdivision levels, because remember that Autodesk Mudbox is a high resolution sculpting tool. So you would bring in a low res mesh to import in, or you would start with one of the previously ones that they've created, and then you would subdivide to add detail, and you would go down to lower divisions to make larger moves. So here they also have reduced mesh as well. Display just allows you to display your viewport in different ways. You can turn the grid on and off. You can hide your mesh. You can hide selected, show selected. UVs and maps. This is for creating UVs on geometry, different UV levels. So this is for painting and adding textures to your model. Rendering. You can render your model as a still image. So once you have your scene set up or your file set up here, you can hit render. You can record a movie if you want to do a turntable or something like that. And then all of your different windows that you could open up are right here. And then you have your help menu. So F1 is your keyboard shortcut for help, and that will bring you into the different websites and the different documentation for the Mudbox help. Now if you look over to the right side, we have these different tabs that are located over here all the way to the right, and here you have your layers. So this will show you any of your objects that you have subdivision level layers from, or that you have made a new layer with to sculpt on. You have two different types of layers. You have a sculpt layer, which is here. So if you want to try to add some sort of detail or some sort of sculpting, you could try to add that on a layer, and then you could delete that sculpt, or you could blend different sculpting layers so that you could maybe make it more subtle or more extreme. Same thing with the paint layer. If you're painting color or specularity or bumping or any kind of color attribute that would require 2D painting, then you could add that to a layer here, and again blend those or delete them as you see fit. Then you have your object list. This shows you all of the different objects that are currently in your file. So obviously you have your main scene, you have your perspective, your top side cameras. You have lighting, so you can come in here and change the intensity, the color, which is diffuse of the light, and then you have your default material, so you can come in here and change how the default material looks. And over here you have your viewport filters. So your viewport filters is for rendering. If you wanted to do something like depth of field, you could click on depth of field. You can see your viewport will automatically apply that depth of field. You can adjust the parameters of the depth of field, the distance from the camera, which is the focal distance, the amount of blur that's taking place in that depth of field, and all of that will change right in your viewport. So they have all different types of things: non-photorealistic, normal mapping, cavity and ambient occlusion rendering that you can do, all different types of things. And you'll notice that as I'm clicking on these, that the bottom here in the properties area is changing. So this is where you would adjust those properties or the attributes of that particular selection. I currently don't have anything in my scene, so I'm not getting any other type of selection attribute. Down to the very bottom here, we have two kind of menu sets here. Your main menu set where all your tools are located in terms of how you're going to sculpt. So you have sculpting tools first, all the different types of sculpt tools that you can do. You can just click on to select that tool, and again, once you click on it, you'll notice that over to the properties, you'll have various attributes and settings that you can do, such as the size, the strength, and mirroring on whichever axes you want to mirror. And then you also have multiple different tools in terms of painting. So this is again for 2D painting. You can select any of the paint brushes, the clone, the stamp, the projection, eyedropper to pick up certain colors. Curve tools if you're creating curves or grabbing and sculpting or moving curves. Pose tool, this will allow you to create different types of joints that could allow you to move sections of your model into a certain pose in order to allow for better sculpting or for render. And you'll notice that as you leave your mouse over any of these tools, you get a kind of help box that pops up. Then you have your select move tools. So here you can select faces of your object. You can select the object as a whole. You can select the border edges of the object, UV shells. This is how you can translate or position your model. You can rotate your model or selections. Same thing with scaling. And then you have kind of a ruler will allow you to measure the distance between certain surfaces. So let's go ahead real quick, look up here. We notice we're in our 3D viewport right now, so that allows us to sculpt and move around within 3D. We also have a tab here for UV. The UV is a 2D representation of your 3D geometry. It allows you to paint on your model, and typically you want to have separate shells for certain types of color or certain types of or certain parts of your object that you want to paint. Image browser allows you to look at images that you might be using as stencils or whatever. You can see here on the right side you have all your stencils and stamps. This allows you to kind of change what the brush does, so the brush can act kind of like these little streaks that you kind of sculpt in or paint in if you're using the 2D paint. You can paint in things that look like veins. You can paint in bumps or all different types of things. And there's different stencils that you can download online, or you can make your own stencils, which is just a black and white image, grayscale image that you create within something like Photoshop. And then of course you have stencil or stamp off. Same thing with stencils. Stencils and stamps are pretty similar. The only thing is the stamp will kind of allow you just to paint in that particular area of your brush, and the stencil kind of does a copy or repeat copy of everything. Fall off is how your brush acts. So you're looking at kind of this light gray side here in terms of the tip of your brush. So if you kind of imagine that this light gray is half of your brush, and then there's another half here, so this is a very sharp point. So if you're scratching or moving out, you'll get a sharp point and then it'll kind of fall off. Here it'll be a sharp point and a hard edge, and then here you'll get more of a rounded fall off. So these are just different presets in terms of the way that the brush is going to act from the center of your brush out. Material presets, if you want to change the way that your object looks, you can add these different presets onto it, and then your object will kind of take on the properties of that material. And the same thing with lighting. There's different lighting presets. And then there are camera bookmarks. So the camera bookmarks is if you want to position your 3D viewport in such a way and then add that to your bookmarks, so that way if you're moving around and then later on you want to take a render from that particular view, you would just click on the little icon that appears there to show your image. So back up here again, the last tab, we have the Mudbox community. So this will open up if you have internet connection turned on, any of the Mudbox community stuff, so you can get help on things. You can search for tutorials, you can look at the discussion boards and all the forums and all that kind of stuff. So back into the 3D viewport, let's go into create, and I'll create a basic mesh, and we'll start with a sphere. So it's going to bring in the sphere, and this sphere is pretty interesting because it's unlike your default spheres that you might get in something like Maya. In Maya, the spheres, if you look at the top and the bottom, they come to a pole or a point at the top where all of the triangles meet, and then the rest of it is quads or square faces. And then again at the bottom is triangles. Here everything is quads, and when you're sculpting, that allows you to have much smoother, more detailed areas because quads all create a curve or a circle, whereas if you have a triangle, where you go to subdivide that or smooth it will create a point. So here you'll notice that I'm going to get my sculpt brush, and right now I have this kind of stencil or stamp in use, so I'm going to uncheck that stamp so it won't be used in there. I can just come over here as well. Right now the size of it is set for a radius of 6.38 and the strength is 7.21. So now if I just kind of click and drag, you can see I'm beginning to sculpt and pull out of that. You can see that it's kind of clumpy or bumpy, and that's because right now my current sphere here does not have enough resolution to get more detail. So in order to get more detail on that sphere, you could go up to your mesh and you could do add subdivision level, or you can hit the shortcut for Shift D. So if I do Shift D, now I have 6,000 polygons about. So when I sculpt, you can see it's a little bit more kind of noticeable in there. It's still kind of blobby or aliased. If I'm sculpting and I hold Shift, the Shift key will smooth out that area. So again, I'm holding Shift. If I come in here and I hold Control as I'm sculpting, it'll inverse the operation. So just regularly left mouse button drag is sculpting up, but holding Control pushes in or does the inverse of what that brush does. Shift will smooth it out. So again, if I do Shift D, I'm subdividing again. Now I have 24,000 polygons in here. So you can see much better. If I want to change the brush size, again, I can go over here and change size, or the shortcut is if you hold the B key, the letter B on your keyboard down, and you left mouse button, drag left or right, you will be changing the radius or size of your brush. So now I have a little bit bigger brush, or again, B and hold it, and now I have a smaller brush in here. If you want to change the strength, how much that brush affects when you're sculpting, you would hold the M key on your keyboard, the M key, and left and right, and you'll see this line going up and down. And the higher up or the longer that line gets, it means the more it's going to affect. So now at about 85, you can see it really pulled out that geometry. Whereas if I hold the M key and go back down to a very low value, you can see it's subtly pulling that out as you sculpt in. Right. And don't forget that you can also, within your sculpting, you can go up and down levels. We can see under mesh we have page up or page down, or just mesh step up, step down. So on your keyboard, if you use your page down menu, you'll go down the subdivision levels. So that might allow you to do something like use your grab tool, make my brush bigger here, and maybe make my strength a little less. This will allow you to kind of grab certain areas of your object and pull it out like this, and then you can go page up to go up your subdivision level, and then get a smaller brush, make your brush smaller, go back to your sculpting tool, and then continue to sculpt. So when you go down levels, you can make bigger changes and apply to the majority of your model, and then go back up to a higher division level to add more detail into your model. Okay. And if we take one of these and we say, okay, let's do some bumps on it. Now if we sculpt, you can kind of see that it's pulling out little bumps from that kind of texture map that we pulled on it. So here it's really kind of pulling out those bumps now. So you can see it's kind of repeating this pattern over here, that stamp pattern. So I'll just hit Shift to add that in. Another useful brush is way over here called the freeze brush. This allows you to paint an area or multiple areas that you want to hold, meaning you don't want to change for that particular sculpt. And you can hold Shift and kind of blend that freeze in, or you can undo and just really harden that brush. You can again go up to Edit and do your Unfreeze All or Shift U. So basically what this does is once you paint something like this, or even like this in here, if you go to something like your Sculpt tool and you start sculpting, it won't affect that area that you have frozen. So obviously this sculpt is getting still kind of really blobby looking, so you would need more subdivision levels. So now we have almost 100,000. Now we have close to 400,000, because remember, it's 4 times every time. So it's going to subdivide the faces in 2 directions, horizontal and vertically, every single time. So you can see here, now I'm smoothing that out. If I hold M and brush down with that pattern still selected, you can see I'm getting very subtle. Again, if I hold my control key, it's going to push it in instead of pulling it out, and then the shift key to smooth it. So here, my view cube, so I can go right back to the home. So another thing is, if you hold your space bar over your viewport, you can get this hot box or quick box, and this quick box will allow you to do things like adjust your lighting, get your paint brushes, get your sculpt brushes really quickly, do different things with assigning or editing your materials, allow you to get to your move or select or rotate tools very quickly, allow you to change the strength or even the size very quickly. So that's just the space bar held down. So that's a quick look at Autodesk Mudbox 2016.